And she lost her 98-year-old husband, who could not bring it upon himself to explain to her that they were going to lose their home and that she would probably die in assisted living. And this broke his heart, unable to tell her, and he passed away. And when I spoke to her, she was a conservative. So I gave her a video to watch called Inside Job about the financial crisis, thinking there's no way that I'm going to debate to her and help her understand who really took her money. So the next day when I went back, I was working next door, I went back to get the videotape, and she told me with tears in her eyes that she never imagined, because she didn't pay that close of attention. But after watching the video, she looked me dead in my eyes as tears rolled down her face, and she says, the neocons, they fooled us for years since we came to the States and rebuilt our lives after the miracle reunited he and I with no papers. We just by chance saw each other. And why is that so deeply disappointing? Because those people built their lives and they regained their wealth coming here with nothing. They regained their dignity and believed in us. So what does she get? She says the neocons, they are no different than the effing Nazi. And then she apologized for saying that word, saying that the first time only that she had said it before that was in Hebrew slang at the Nazi officer that abused her as he was marched away at the camp by Allied forces. And I looked at her with tears in my own eyes, saying, ma'am, I have an autistic slight that allows me to hear receptions, and it's based through a carbon signature reception that a part of our brain somehow tabulates. Mine was proven in the BOP federal system in 1990 when testing brought attention to my test scores, when 2 years later it was needed to find a patient, a leprosy patient that was missing, which I found in my photographic memory and through autistic reception in audio. But I looked at her and told her that I could hear her even upon her passing, because I knew her heart was broken and she had very little time left on earth. Well, I was on the couch one night and fell asleep just before 10:30 or so, watching the repeat that I had pressed on recording of Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. And I fell asleep for must have been an hour, and I woke up from a dream, and she was in my face telling me, Google Russian corruption 2008. Medvedev is crying. Medvedev is crying. So I picked up my phone, I punched it in, and lo and behold, the Atlantic Master and Medvedev article posted on my phone. And as I read down to the part where it talked about a third of Russia's economy stolen in corruption, I knew that the missing piece of the puzzle was looking me in my eyes. So the first thing I did was post it to Donald Trump's Twitter feed, asking him, Donald Trump, did you really give default swap information to an adversary to rip off the American retirees? 2 retweets later, within 5 minutes, I get an email alert to my main email, and it's Donald Trump asking me to meet immediately. No contest, nothing else. We will pay your way to DC. Let that sink in, folks. We will pay your way to DC. 3 days later, after my reply was a little pointed, which I said, "Who the F is we? You and your little boyfriend Putin?" 3 days later, I'm ready to leave to go to work to meet a new contractor on a friend who aligned me to her job in the French Quarter to restore a historic place that her aunt had left her. And when I was leaving my house, a text message came over my phone, and it said something about, "Didn't you see Snowden?" And it said, "We can see you." And I thought, wow, one of my friends, a number I don't recognize, is playing a joke on me. But when I got to that job, when I approached the contractor and we meet, I said, "Hey, pardon my phone. We may be getting interrupted by the Russians." And I laughed. Well, 5 minutes into that conversation, my phone rang me. And I looked at my name, and he looked at me. On the third call, he looked at me with his jaw dropped and said, "You weren't kidding, were you?" And I said, "No, I was hoping I was." But I got this text showing him the text, and I think that I have hit a nerve, not only on this side of the pond, but on the other. And that is when I called AT&T, and the operator began to cry as she looked at my problem on her screen. I could hear her sobbing as she said, "Sir, oh my God, what on earth have you gotten yourself into?" I said, "Ma'am, don't cry." I said, "I'm not afraid." I said, "I know that I'm in danger, but I'm not afraid because this is my patriot. This is from my Twitter activity where I touched a nerve. And I believe it's the gold mother of load, because this is what Trump and Russia is about. Stealing American wealth from retirees and 401ks, like my mom, who lost 55% the year that she retired. So afraid she pulled out, afraid to put it back in. She didn't get to ride up. That happened to millions of old people, boomers, that are clueless and have no idea what happened to them because no one knows this story. I am asking you, as a libertarian socialist full of progressive ideas, hoping to change not only Washington, but to change the course of our planet. The Green New Deal real story I shared to AOC on her rep page even before she was sworn in, as it was set up. And I gave her details, the real Green New Deal details, that neither she or Bernie really had the courage to speak about, because they had not read the real Green New Deal. Only in my comments that were left, being about 20 comments, that I ranted Rep. Matt Gaetz because he was talking to AOC, bullying her, thinking it was her, when I knew it was a staffer, because the staffer was running her page as I watched her on a live preview on TV. She was live. So why is that a big deal? Because Matt Gaetz got so afraid, being a libertarian-leaning person himself, he got so afraid he tried to plagiarize my idea, until I got on that evening and posted him the certificate link so he could see that he was violating my copyright of the Green New Deal book. The name of the book is Raw War Against Law Without Logic, copyrighted 2009. Part of the reason I'm here today is because I need a publisher. I have never published my book because I've never been able to afford it after I bought this home. So I need your help. I need a publisher that's going to help me save this planet because I know the plan to do it. And I'm going to talk about that plan, but I have to finish the story first about why the Russian problem is such a big deal. Vladimir Putin has leverage due to felony charges that are applicable to the National Rifle Association Butina case. The money that was flowing into those Republican coffers is a felony. Leverage designed to help Putin get those sanctions to unfreeze his money. We need an immediate audit of those funds that went to Vladimir Putin to show when the origin of the gain appeared in that paperwork. Because if it happened in 2008, someone helped him. Let that sink in. Someone gave insider trading knowledge. God knows how they developed this knowledge, but I think I know. And if any of you remember, 2 arrests happened in January just before Epstein was arrested. Those were an equity manager and a hedge fund manager in the state of Florida, connected to the same spa ring that Alan Dershowitz gets massages with his boxers on. Let that sink in a minute. There's more about him I'm going to tell you too in a second. So get back to the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal begins in gathering. Earth's oldest culture on the planet, still practiced by the only meek left on this planet, the Rastafarian of Ethiopia, who have never left the sacred ground that they live in human history. They have never killed anything in human history. They have not farmed in human history because they are the beginning, the alpha, the gatherer, not the hunter that came after, that I kind of believe there is some symbolic gesture in the story of Cain and Abel. If you remember, Cain was rejected. Everybody thinks because of jealousy, because the sacrifice that Abel offered made God more happy. But what really caused that rejection is farming, because a lack of faith would have you go farm and try to keep something and store a bunch of stuff for later. That is not what the original plan was. The original plan was gathering, to wake up, go get something to eat, and procreate more. Not to strap a plow and make an ox or some animal a slave and make him pull a plow through mud. That is creating toil that came through deception. When deception came, it brought the curse of the ground, which is metal taken from the ground to reward toil, which added value to time. By adding value to time, we created a system of reward to reward a curse that leads to wrath, that leads to black death oil. That is not the destiny of gatherers. The destiny of gatherers is with love, to walk your way to the plants that yield a sacred seed, that grows a plant that even in biblical scripture and verses talks about a plant that grows oil in the trees. That is the Green New Deal. When Unity Day 420, as designed in my book, is created as a global holiday, it becomes a seed gathering seed sowing holiday. The interstates around the globe, by farmers collecting subsidies, are plowed into beds, allowing everyone to scatter seeds to be tended by, in this country alone, my plan uses 20 million workers. 20 million workers at a salary of $35,000 a year is $750 billion. That math was added to the handwritten 1997 Green New Deal book, Raw War. That value discrepancy was added in 2006 while I typesetted that book and gave details on Newsvine blog, which was NBC's old blog. That $750 billion is what we sent out of this country every year for oil. Black death, that we drill holes in our mother. And when I say mother, my Blackfoot blood offers that, because that is what Native people see, Earth, our mother, grandmother. And when we drill holes in our own mother and suck death from the ground in toil, it is hate, and it is death, and it is wrath. If we initiate my plan, when 24-hour festivals happen on that day worldwide, connected by screens, once this virus is over, the world will unite around being the tenders of mother's green flesh that will grow from our love of gathering to spread her flesh around the world. In that flesh will consume the carbon that is in our airs right where it emits. And we can recycle it into plant growth to become soil, into the oil to run our cars, into the protein, once enough seed stock is grown over 10 years, into the protein that offers the most complex carbohydrate, the most complex amino acid protein known to man so far. Makes flaxseed and other sources minimal in comparison. That is what helps our bodies create cells without mutation. Our CB2 receptors, which we inherit from the sea, from an ocean invertebrate called a sea squirt, as DNA mapping the human genome took us to the sea to find out where CB2 and CB1 receptors come from. CB1 works on sensory, CB2 works on communication. We need 7 areas of our brain to identify mutated cells in our bodies, whether from virus or from parasites, where our bodies can't heal, and they keep trying and trying until they make a mistake and make a mutated cell that grows into a tumor. The CBN transmitter that our bodies create on its own is the exact mimic of the THC molecule CBN, tetrahydrochloride. Those two things, people, kind of make a circle of life between us and connecting us to the sea. Mother's link between us and the sea, and the ground, and the sun, and the water. She is one of the elements. She is one of the elements that is going to heal this planet. And because of all of the forces that be, whether it's pharmaceuticals, oil, even alcohol, they all have fought for years to keep from us, in which is a cure not only for us, but a cure for this planet. I need your help. My name is Ryan Wall, president of Raw Ideas, Inc., author of the Green New Deal book, Raw War Against Law Without Logic. And yes, I am the rightful owner, I guess you could say, of those words that I gave to Amanda Gorman. Each laureate has made millions from their speech. So let's just say the Green New Deal gave someone millions of dollars, and now I need her to fight for my rights to have my comment reinstated, and I'm seeking not $1. I am just seeking respect for my human dignity that runs way deep. Joe Biden, before he went to his Middle East speech, because of my letters, I suppose, contacted me asking me what to say. And what I told him was that the only thing missing in the Middle East to heal those people is one thing, and it's called dignity. The recognition of someone's dignity is respect. How on earth, I asked him, is peace ever going to happen between the three doctrines of Abraham if his two children's people cannot find common ground in knowing that Abraham's peace only exists when they are one family? Because to him and to God, who said both sons were blessed, they are one family. It is Jesus Christ that brought that story to a head. Some believe he may have caused more trouble than he solved. But he brought the healing of man in one word. That word is forgiveness. And for that reason, I do not believe that the second coming that he spoke to us about would be someone that is going to solve wars between men. It's going to be someone who solved war between us and our mother. And I believe he gave us details of a man that has already come and already died. And that man has Rasta roots. That man is connected to the oldest colony on this planet and their culture. It is Bob Marley who came with the message of peace, love, and respect and unity for our mother. Let that sink in, you guys. Okay, I know some of you have discrepancy about biblical stuff and all, but let it sink in. The oldest colony on earth, who have never killed, are innocent. Unlike the people who had killed, Jesus was born from, as the story says, in immaculate conception to purify him. Bob Marley came from pure people, pure faith, innocent faith that had followed God's obedient message from the beginning of time. The Queen of Sheba had traveled to see King Solomon to test his knowledge. Imagine the astonishment to her as she was told the story that deception had erased that innate life of gathering, that original way of life had disappeared from the planet, only to look him back in his eyes and say, well, you are speaking of my people, and this way of life, our culture, goes back as far as time goes. Let that sink in, you guys. She bore a son from King Solomon, the same bloodline that Christ came from, many generations after him. So as that sinks in, understand when Bob Marley was born. February 6th, 1945. Right as the World War was about to close, and just before stars fell from the sky, that murdered thousands of people in those 2 bombs dropped on Japan. All of the details that point to the rise of a great man are written right there in those Revelation scriptures, along with the very last words that say the meek shall inherit the earth. But can they inherit the earth if those who left that colony choosing toil, choosing oil, are killing their environment around them? If we allow the only meek that can inherit this earth to perish, who are we? We're the parasites. They are the tenders, the people. So as I went deeper into my knowledge about the Rasta, it was because I read a book called Before the Dawn by Nicholas Wade. And I hadn't even finished the book yet because I got married and got really busy. And when I went to Jamaica for my honeymoon, I learned the story of the Rasta and their Ethiopian roots. And it all started coming at me so fast that I realized, oh my God, there is more to Bob Marley than the world knows. Because is he the Son of Man? And those questions kept going through my mind until one day, after reading those other scriptures, how it said that Jesus went up into the mountains and was tempted by the devil, and different things that about the city of Jerusalem coming down from the mountains or from the sky. Well, Bob Marley was born in the clouds. As I drove back down the mountain from 9 Mile, my wife and I, terrified driving. If you ever go, please do it, but it's terrifying. And make sure you use your horn or you will die. But as I was coming down that mountain, those verses were going through my head as I went through clouds to get back down to ground level. And I realized that maybe the new message is naturalism, gathering. Maybe that is what heals this earth. And maybe that is why most of the book of Raw Ideas, of Raw War, was written as I was about to go to prison for 8 years for flour. I was desperate and sat down to write a book to try to save myself. But in the process, my autism took over and I started going into saving Mother Earth in a way that left me feeling not depressed about where I was going, but that it led me to this life, to this idea, to this message. And not that long ago, about, I guess, 1.5 years, out of the clear blue, a thought came to my mind to look up Bob Marley's obituary. And when I did, I noticed that he had died in May 11th of 1981. Why is that significant? Because the Rastafarian religion believes that the true Messiah that came from the generations after the birth of Queen Sheba's son, well, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Her son was supposed to have been the lineage that would lead to a Messiah, which was the leader that died in his 70s, exactly the same year that Bob Marley died. So why is that important? I want you to go to his obituary and I want you to read the details and have them handy. So when you go into the book of Solomon in the Old Testament, I want you to take that 5:11, which is May 11th, and I want you to go to chapter 5, verse 11, and I want you to read down to verse 16. And while you do so, I want you to try to imagine the carbon signature that spoke scripture to Moses and to all the others that wrote those books in that Bible. That carbon signature is mother. It is energy that each breath that leaves our mouth that converts oxygen to carbon attaches a proton that science cannot see, but they know exists, and they know it exists infinitely. Let that sink in. Every breath you breathe, love is attached to those particles if that is what you are attaching to it with your energy. From this information is where medium and different people have reception, because their pineal gland, for whatever reason like mine, is wide open without barriers and is able through uptake to condense that information into cognition and into thought and imagination. And you can read up a little bit about pineal gland in Pineal Gland, the God Organ link by Hub. Very, very deep understanding of the possibility that I'm speaking here. But when you think about love in the air that those people who wrote those books put down in scripture, think of it not as a human correction, but as a human guide. A guide that is an actual preservationist story to help us understand that preservation of our earth, God's first creation after the stars in the heavens, and obviously his first love, that is what our purpose is. To love our mother, not to drill holes in her and take her blood. That's what parasites do. So when you let that sink in, that carbon signature fed that information to those people, let it sink in that the words you are going to read in 11 through 16, 5:11, Song of Solomon, are words from Mother speaking to her Son of Man that would come to this earth and open the possibility that we would see a healing through gathering, through growing, and through conversion. And those words are written by the bride, the new bride of Solomon, as she described her man. Just let all of that sink in, and the coincidental barriers